All right, this week we're going to talk about how to hack your life like a boss. I have a special guest, so make sure y'all tune in. Let's get it. All right, welcome back to the JefeTalk Podcast. It is your host Jefe. It is another blessed week. I am super excited about today's guest. She goes by the name of Elisabeth Hoekstra. Many of you know her from the Forbidden Knowledge TV. She's the director of operations. She has a #1 amazing book on Amazon. More than happy to introduce her. Elisabeth, welcome. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. And your intro was so fire.
Oh, thank you. I've been working on that for years. It has always been a journey, but we getting there a day at a time.
Yeah. I liked it. It was dope. It
Thank
was
you,
dope.
thank you. So yeah, this is the Jefe Talk podcast, and as you may already know, this podcast is designed to elevate people's mindset, empower them to be more boss-like minded. Right? Too many times people think a boss is about telling people what to do. A boss is more so of being in control of yourself, being in control of your destiny. And I just thought it make absolute sense to get you on because a lot of the talking points that we do talk about is very similar. And sometimes you between your husband go two and three third levels deeper on that. So I was super excited to get you on the podcast. So if you don't mind, share maybe a little background about where you're from and how do we get you to this point?
Yeah, so I have a very interesting story. It's been a long journey, a long ride. I was actually born in Korea and I came over to America when I was 3 months old. I got adopted and I started my journey very early. And it started out with some trauma. My adoptive process was not traumatic, but my birth was traumatic for me as
Wow.
I didn't see my mother. So it was just a lot of stuff that began my life kind of in the wrong direction, which
Wow.
happens to so many of us, right? So I started getting involved in kind of negative things at a very young age. And that kind of spun me out into a little bit of a crazy teenage life. And then early 20s, I just got even crazier. If you
Mm.
read my book or if you've read my book, you kind of know my story. I was involved, I just got into drugs and alcohol at a very young
Mm-hmm.
age,
Wow.
partying. I mean, I got in trouble with the law, I got locked up. I mean, it was just really crazy. I was running.
Huge testimony. Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild because of that traumatic beginning kind of spun me out, which then in turn, I kind of figured out that when I was born, I enveloped this traumatic energy almost. And
Hmm.
when things happen to you, you almost attract more of it into your frequency, into your vibration. So I kept
Interesting.
attracting more traumatic events and traumatic events that led me into this path of numbing. I was in freeze. My nervous system was in freeze, and it would flow between freeze and fight or flight. So I was not in a healthy space for a very long time. Although I did have a very successful, what quote unquote people would observe as success, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, I was a successful model and actress for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I became a pastry chef. I was a real estate agent, and I trained 30 agents under me at one time, and I won
That's
awards
what's
for
up.
that. I
Yeah.
mean, so from the outside looking in, I had a very successful life, even though I was really toxic on the inside and hiding this secret life, behind closed
Yeah.
doors. So
I mean, that could be heavy,
yeah.
especially with all the accomplishments and kind of your journey. And I read your bio, I did my research, and you hit the nail on the head. You had so much going on, but somehow you found a way to still persevere, but you were still dealing with that inner trauma, especially from childhood all the way up to your adult life.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great segue into, the title of How to Hack Your Life, because you have an amazing series with your husband on that whole topic, right? And I think it's interesting that you were so open with your background. And I think, one of the biggest ways people can actually release themselves is just acknowledging who they were right? Because to know where you're going, you got to know who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So if you can touch on that, what is the misconceptions or understandings about your DNA, right? How does your DNA play into a fact of who your true identity is as a person?
Yeah, so there's this thing called epigenetics, right?
Okay, let's
And
get it.
it's
Let's get
where
it.
it's where the DNA from your father's sperm is actually passed into you as a being, and it can go
Wow.
back even 15, 20, I even believe more generations at a time. So you're dealing with trauma from 20 years ago that's not even really yours. So you could be
Wow.
having triggers in this life that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't correlate with any traumatic event that you've actually had in this experience in this lifetime. And it could be something from your great grandfather that your great grandfather dealt with. Interesting
Mm.
story. So I have this thing about food, right?
Okay,
And
okay.
I never like my refrigerator to ever be empty. So it's always overstacked. And I'm always thinking about the next meal. I've always just had a thing with food. And
Yeah.
I've never been starving. I mean, I had a little rough patch there in Hollywood for a second, but it wasn't enough to really have this obsession over having my refrigerator stacked and always thinking about food, right? And
Yeah.
getting really, really triggered when I would be hungry. So I correlated that and did some regression work, and I actually found out that my lineage was hungry at a specific time.
Wow. So you're
So
dealing with probably maybe decades of just built-in trauma or just a way of dealing with things that's pretty much in your DNA now that you have to cope with.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So if you really do a study on your ancestry, you can figure out that there are some things that might have happened to your great grandfather, your great great grandfather, generations and generations ago that are still affecting you today. It's really interesting if
Wow.
anyone ever
And
wants to dig into it.
and do you do a connection to probably people relationships, maybe their career paths? Like does all of that tie into maybe their work-life balance or relationships? How does that connect?
I would think so. I haven't really dove too deep into it, but just thinking about trauma and how it affects the body and how it affects decision making, I
Mm.
would definitely correlate a traumatic event, like for instance, that food thing,
Yeah.
right? I could never do. I think that's why I got into the culinary industry, why I became a
Oh, that's a
pastry
good
chef.
point. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, why does that just happen? All of a sudden, boom, I'm interested in cooking. I love it. I want to be around food. I
Yeah.
mean, that could have stemmed from something that my great grandfather went through.
Mm.
So I believe anything traumatic or anything that you've experienced in this lifetime that has caused a traumatic shift or it has caused your nervous system to get stuck and it's
Mm.
now stuck in your cellular memory and in your body, that makes you behave in certain ways that you wouldn't if it was not there. So I think it all
Interesting.
correlates.
So as we dive into this, my question is at what point are we allowed or do we take accountability, right, for our day to day actions? And because, unfortunately, we have a tendency to have certain things as a crutch,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, not be ignorant to the fact that it is real things going within inside yourself. So, how do you balance knowing, hey, should I move forward with this understanding about me as a person and it is what it is, or I want to be the shift. I want to break that generational quote unquote curse. So, how do you kind of find that thin line there?
I mean, that when I became conscious, right? And I
Good,
realized,
good, good word. Okay,
yeah.
consciousness is key. Yes.
When I really became conscious, I took responsibility for my life. I took
Mm,
responsibility for every single thing that had happened to me. Not saying that any abuse is right? But you carry energy, you hold a vibration. So
mm.
everything that you attract into your life, you attract it somehow, some way, through vibration, through energetic thought. I mean, this is how our universe works. It's scientifically proven. Okay. So
Wow.
everything, I took responsibility, and that right there, taking responsibility to everything that's happened to me, to all my actions, all my mistakes, all my, not even mistakes, my lessons, right? I don't
I
ever
like
think
that.
that I make mistakes. I really believe that things are always lessons, right?
Correct.
So once I took that responsibility, I became powerful. And
Mm,
that's what people need to understand and really take grasp of who they are and how they got there. Because
Mm,
once you can understand that you've attracted all of this to you, you can then change, manipulate, and take your power back to create the life that you want to create.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit a lot of good points. I always try to allude or get into the conversation with people about what you feel has a lot to do with what you attract to. And I always talk about about learning how to feel within the state of where you want to be, right?
Mhm.
When you start feeling in that future area or that future time frame of where you want to be, that feeling is going to come to you quicker than you know it.
Yeah.
Right. So I love how you mentioned the vibration and the frequency. Now, for those new listeners that have no idea of what vibration or frequency, how can we kind of give them a quick understanding of what that really is? Is it something that's literally coming out of you, or I'm a play dumb? What is that?
Yeah, so we are bioelectric beings.
Mm,
Everything is energy in this universe. Everything is has atoms. Atoms are always moving. Atoms are energy. Atoms are what we're built of, what this third dimension is built of. So our energetic fields, we have one. It extends extremely far. That's when some people can actually see it, and it's called your aura, right? So our
that's a good. Oh,
energy,
okay, so that's what that
yes,
is. So when I
yes.
walk in
I
a
mean,
room and everybody, that's the aura that's coming in. All right, I got
yes,
you.
that's our energetic body, right?
Yeah.
And every single being on this planet has one. Animals have one. We all have this energy that surrounds us that extends outwardly because honestly, we can see less than 1% of the color spectrum. So if we could see even 5%, can you imagine what else we
Wow.
could see? We
I
see
never thought
less
about it
than
like that.
1%. I mean, that's nothing.
That's crazy.
Yes, we don't see anything. We don't see anything. So, our vibration, like I said, atoms, they're all constantly moving, right? They're
Mm,
constantly moving. And a very, low vibration would be guilt, shame,
mm,
envy, hatred. That's a very low vibration. And that actually sends energetic waves out into the ether and will attract
mm.
that right back to you. Just like I said before, manifestation, thought, it's all energy. And that's
Yeah.
how this universe is built. Whatever you put out comes back. So, a high vibration would be happiness,
Yeah.
love. Love is the
Mm-hmm.
highest form of and state and vibration that we can sit in. And that's what
Mm,
this universe is made of. That's what I think that we're kind of here to really learn how to really become that love and
mm-hmm.
and inspire that love and change within others because we're all stuffed full of trauma. It's
Yeah.
impossible to leave this life or live this life unscathed of trauma. We all have it and it affects us on an energetic level.
Yeah.
So it can cause blockages within our energy and everything that is thought and emotion and traumatic. Everything manifests physically in our body somewhere.
Yeah.
So if you are always walking around and you're stressed out and you're depressed, I mean, 30
Something
years
medically.
down the
Yeah.
line,
It's gonna
exactly.
start something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You,
Autoimmune disease is created through stress trauma. That's
mm,
that's stress on the body. That's your body being in a stress state for too long. And literally you can go into the physiology and what happens
correct.
with your hormonal balance when you're stressed out. And that causes influx in different things within your system that actually causes disease. And this is proven.
Wow.
So
Wow. So just even thinking about it, I mean, even I remember when I was in the hospital, the doctor always used to ask how am I feeling. They used to draw smiley faces, the
mhm,
visuals, and they're doing everything in their best ability to make sure my mood state was at a higher level,
yeah.
and also always checking on stresses because stress is either gonna make the condition worse or you
Yes.
can improve it.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
really interesting. So I guess as we kind of bring this full circle when it comes down to the mental health, right? Because we hear a lot about this, especially ever since COVID, people being stuck in a house, stuck with people they don't like, from the workforce and everything. The mental challenges. So where do we begin? How do we even conquer the background of what we may be exposed to or when we do that research, or even if some people don't take the time out to do the research, what is the first step somebody can do to kind of get over that hump and start curating their life like you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is realizing that you have it, that you have
Acknowledgement. Yeah.
trauma. Acknowledgement, exactly. Because
Mm,
if you don't acknowledge and you don't know that you have something going on, you can never correct it. Not ever.
mm,
So acknowledgement is number one. Number one, knowing that you have stress, that you have trauma, and then really, really diving deep into that, right? Because
mm.
once you can kind of consciously connect different things with traumatic events in your life, you can kind of start making sense of why things are happening, how things are happening. Like I talked about a little bit earlier, you can start creating change once you realize that, hey, I create my life and
Yeah.
I can create an awful life where I'm depressed, stressed out, and angry all the time. Or I can create my best life if I
Mm-hmm.
really, really dig into to start doing this work. So it's really, really understanding that all of us, and it's just society has put a negative spin on the
Yeah.
fact that people have trauma and people
That's a
are
fact.
stressed and
Yeah. And
depressed.
people don't even want to share that they have it. And I'm gonna
Exactly.
be honest. I grew up in Harlem, New York, and the word therapy is forbidden, right?
Yeah.
The word of going to, oh, you went to the doctor? Like, what's
Mhm.
wrong with you, right? You used to get made fun of if you said anything about mental health. Oh,
Exactly.
he's the crazy one, quote unquote.
Yes.
So I'm glad you're sharing that about, encouraging people. Look, first do the right steps of acknowledging you have a problem or you have trauma that you have to deal with.
Mhm. And
Wow.
it's a part of life though. That's a part of life, and that's the thing that people really should try to grasp is it's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with you. There was
I love
nothing
that.
wrong with me. We are all just on this journey trying to make it in this life, right? That
Right?
that
We
we
all
were
trying to
given. We're just
survive. Yeah.
exactly. We're all just trying to be happy, to love, and we're all just exactly trying to survive. So there's nothing wrong with anybody. It's just the fact that okay, certain things during my journey, which everybody has stressed my body out, has prolonged my nervous system in these stress states, which has
Mm,
imprinted trauma on my cellular memory, on my body, on my cells, on my mind. So it's normal. This is a normal thing. And
wow.
so society, I hate that I think the it's changing a little bit the perspective of mental health
Yeah.
and therapy and healing and everything. I think it's starting to change.
Yeah, I see it a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I just need it. I want it to keep going in that direction because we are so powerful. We can create the life that we want. We can create and
Literally.
manifest literally like this.
Talk that talk.
It's
Yes.
magic. It's literally magic. And
Yeah.
so the only way that you can literally do that though is dealing with your stress, is dealing with your trauma and getting that negative frequency out of your body. I
Mm,
see it as a radio stream, like into the top of our heads, right? Like
yeah.
a literal frequency
Nonstop.
going into the top of our heads.
Yeah.
When we're filled up with stress and trauma, I see that frequency being staticky. So there's
Mm,
missing pieces. So we're not streaming in the constant, beautiful 100% divinity that we are supposed to be connected to at all times
yeah.
because we have these negative things that are blocking some of it. So once we
Mm,
can learn to really clear that and clear
yeah.
that trauma out of our system, clear the stress out of our system, raise our vibration, change our energetic fields, it becomes magic. It
Wow.
becomes magic.
You know what? As I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking about a bunch of colleagues and friends, and especially I got some friends back home in New York. And they always talk about, okay, it's one thing about knowing about their background and trauma, but their environment, right? They feel
Yeah.
like they're stuck, right? So when
Mhm.
you're in that type of environment, it's kind of hard not to be reminded of certain traumas and different things. Are there any practices or maybe supernatural practices or things they can do within their home to kind of maybe enlighten their spirit? Or as we get into the conversation of consciousness, what can they do physically, right, for them to maybe elevate or put themselves in a better position mentally as well? What's your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
so I always tell people that the number one thing you can do, the easiest thing that you can do, doesn't cost any money, is really try to change your negative thought process. And by
Okay.
doing that, there's strategies to doing that. So the first thing that you do, what you do when you wake up, is your mind starts to race. You might grab your phone and start scrolling on social. Don't do that. Take 15 minutes,
Thank
right?
you. Yeah.
Keep your eyes closed
Yeah.
and really think about 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for. And that
Mm.
honestly, okay, so these days we become really, really sped up with stimulus, right? With social media, with our
Hmm.
phones. And physiologically, when our brains wake up from that sleep state, we're in alpha, right? Our brains are supposed to go into alpha brainwave, which is a little, it's a medium wavelength, right? But
Yeah.
when we jump to social media and start scrolling, it wakes our brain up and it starts filling it up with stimulus, and it doesn't give it that alpha stage, and so it
Wow.
jumps into conscious immediate go 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 go, and that creates stress for our brains. So if
Yo,
you
this
can
is crazy. Yeah,
literally
I'm thinking about so many things as you're talking. Now, my question is the same way our ancestors, right, coded our DNA, are we technically recoding our DNA for our future offsprings by our habits of social media, the dopamine, like all the different things? So we're basically setting up our future by our daily habits now.
Absolutely, we are. Absolutely, we are. You know, DNA, they used to say, oh, because you have this DNA, you about to get cancer because you have this specific gene that's about to cause cancer.
Yeah.
That's not true. You can have that gene that causes cancer, but it's your environment. It's the environment
Mm,
of your physiology, your thought process, your what you're living in that can
correct.
either turn that gene on or off. You have full control of these bodies. That's another thing with epigenetics.
Yeah.
Bruce Lipton, his work is amazing. If you guys want to
Yes, I heard
study,
of him.
oh man, I mean, he's written books about this, books and books about this. And it is so interesting because we have been taught and conditioned after all of these years that we don't have power, that just because our parents had this thing, now we're doomed to have this thing too, which creates this thought process which turns that gene on, even though that's not how that happens. It's
Yeah.
thought process. It's your environment that can either turn the gene on, turn the gene off. So we have full
Wow.
control.
I love that. I always tell, especially my listeners, about action to create change, right? As well as your attitude changes your altitude, right? And even just making that conscious decision of I'm going to change my environment, the people around me, right? Because that plays a huge part. That's the biggest step for most people that they just can't jump over, right? Because they're concerned about perception, how they might look.
Yeah,
Well, I can't. It's my family member and things of that nature. And I think it literally just comes down to how much do you value the change that you want, right? If you don't position that value as a value proposition for your life, you're literally going to be doing the same thing for years and years and years until you potentially die. Wow,
exactly.
that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Well, you have to reprogram those negative thought processes too. I mean, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's really really hard. A lot of people are literally in this program where they don't have any conscious thought. They're just reacting to whatever stimulus is happening to them, which is not the
Mm.
way to live. You're not consciously in any of these moments if
Yeah.
you're always reacting, reacting, reacting. So,
Correct.
like I was talking about waking up and really thinking about everything that you're grateful for instead of reaching for your phone. I mean, try that because that will create some space between stimulus and reaction for thought process. It will slow you
Interesting.
down. It
Yeah.
will help you become more grateful for things. It literally changes the way you think, the way your body responds to things. It
Mm-hmm.
literally changes. Do that
Wow.
when you wake up, do it right before you go to sleep, and you after 30 days watch your life take a big big change.
I love that. I
Mhm.
mean, I hope everyone out there is listening. Y'all should have at least 5 pages filled up. I got to figure out how to get you on at another time because you are really hitting a lot of talking points, and I'm sure you can go second and third level. While I have you here, I had a few questions from some viewers. One of the questions was, "Do you believe in time travel?" And when it comes down to
Yeah.
time travel, more of putting yourself obviously in another time or in the past, and can you get any positive things having the ability to time travel if you do believe in it? That was one of the questions.
That is so interesting. So I'm not completely educated on time travel, although my personal belief on it is there is no such thing as time. This
Yes, that's
dimension
what I was about to get
creates
into. Yeah,
time, right? Yeah. So, but really everything is happening at the same time, and
correct.
infinite possibilities are happening all at the same time. There is no time in this
Yeah.
dimension. So I think it's possible to kind of flip back and forth But
Mm-hmm.
I was at this conference recently and they
There we
were
go.
actually talking about time travel.
Wow.
So you can actually go forward. I believe it's either forward or backward, but
Yes,
it's
yes.
proven now. The government is already doing it. So,
That's
I mean, super
crazy.
crazy. Yes. So it is possible. It is possible. I'm just not super educated on it. But
Yeah.
personally, I mean, I've done regression work
Yeah.
and
And what is
connected
regression
to
work for those who never heard of that? If you can explain what that
yeah,
is.
yeah. So regression work is either, I mean, I've gotten hypnotized and
Okay.
literally gone back into previous lives that I've had.
Wow.
And then I've actually gone back to my birth process, which was a really healing moment for me
So
because
you
I've
was
figured
time
out,
traveling.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So you can
Yeah, yeah,
jump back and forth because you can connect with old cellular memory
yeah.
because your cells remember everything. I mean,
Correct.
I was having this type of body work, which is called somato emotional release work, and this practitioner, she connects to cellular memory, different cellular memories and traumas on your body, basically. And she put her hands on my stomach this one day, and boom, I jumped back into my mother's womb, and these
What?
floods of feeling and emotion and memory came back to me, and I'm sitting there like, what,
Wow.
what is
That's
going
deep.
on?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, because halfway through pregnancy, the stress hormones
Yeah.
can cross the placenta. So your baby, after halfway through pregnancy, can feel all of your emotion, all of it. So I was feeling all of her stress, all of her anxiety, everything in those moments because boom, my cells remembered that. So I connected with my cellular memory through somato emotional release work, which is a type of time travel. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you say that, I mean, I'm thinking about all the different things we struggle with, from anxiety,
Oh man.
from just lack of communication because of fear and things of
Yeah.
that nature. And I'm wondering if it's tied to early childhood things that we probably experience,
Yes.
or maybe trauma we received from maybe parents,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Different things like that. I had a close friend of mine that dealt with so much verbal abuse,
Mm.
it limit her and be able to communicate effectively as an adult, right? Or at least express herself, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
interesting you're saying that you have to do the work. You have to kind of take that step and seek the help to understand what took place so you can put the right measures in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the way that we act now as adults is because of the way that we were treated and raised at from 0 to 7. That's
Mm,
literally programming us for the rest of our lives, and we can either be set up for success or set up for failure. And no one's perfect, right? None of us are perfect. We're
yeah.
all traumatized beings handing down our trauma to our younger generations. It's just
Mm,
what's been happening for years and years and years. So brainwaves, again, about
yeah.
brainwaves, you're literally in alpha brain state when you're from 0 to 7, and that's
Yeah.
programming your thoughts and the way you move and the way you talk and the way you walk. It's programming everything about you.
Yeah.
So you really have to know and recondition yourself because it's not what we were taught at that age. It's not.
Correct.
We have
Mm-hmm.
to recondition our minds, our bodies, and really just retrain ourselves to really be who we're supposed to be, which is a divine being attracting everything for us at all times.
Yeah.
But because of those years and because you can't go unscathed trauma, like I said, I mean, I bounced back into my mother's womb, and because she was feeling anxious and stressed out, that imprinted on me. I had major abandonment issues because of certain things that happened with my adoption. So
Wow.
because of that, it's created this life of abandonment issues when I feel like I was going to die because my partner is walking away from me.
Wow.
Ridiculous, not ridiculous, but understandable feelings because of the things that happened to me when I was a baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you can kind of consciously connect those memories, right, with doing the work, like I was saying, regression work,
Yeah.
hypnotism, somato emotional release work, any type of trauma release work is really, really good. So
Okay.
there's all these different types of modalities, all these different types of biohacks that you can actually do to release that trauma from your body and to maybe remember some of the stuff that's been going on or that happened to you so you can learn to kind of rewire yourself about those things.
Mm. Wow. That's super, super dope, especially how you even got to the point of realizing what state you was in and also
Mhm.
how to overcome it. And I
Yes.
think this is going to be a huge, huge gem for everyone listening on literally how to hack your life. And that's what today's topic was about, right? What things we can do personally to start changing the trajectory of where we're going, right? But we first got to know how to get there. And the first part is going to be obviously about who you are as a person, your identity, which is huge. I was reading a study by, I believe her name is Jennifer Newson, and she did EEG frequency bands on psychotic disorders. And what they do is they put everybody in a resting state and they start measuring the frequencies. And then they connect the frequencies to all the different disorders based off how that person rests, right? So I think it's kind of interesting how you talked about frequencies and understanding the brain waves they put off a lot. It tells you history, basically, of what they're putting out.
Oh yeah, it does.
That's
Brain health.
awesome.
Yes, brain health is major. You know, people say mental health, but really it's brain health.
Yeah.
Dr. Amen is one of my favorite doctors. He's written, I think he's a 14 times New York Times bestselling author.
Okay.
I've read all of his books, and
And what
he's
is his name again? Dr.
Dr. Amen.
Dr.
Dr.
Ahmed? Okay.
Amen.
I'll
Yes.
check him
I
out.
mean, he's amazing. And what he
Yeah.
does is he studies brains. And we actually got a SPECT scan. So I was able to see I got a SPECT scan, which is basically it's radio imprinting. So it's showing the functionality of what is going on in your brain, the blood flow, what areas have high blood flow, what areas might not have high blood flow. And off of 2 minutes, off of looking at my scan, he was like, you're in a stress response. He's like, you probably have a lot of anxiety. He's like, you're very
Wow.
impulsive because this right here, it looks like you might have gotten hit in the head or you've had some sort of trauma to the head there, which would cause you to be very impulsive because that part of your brain causes that, right? If it doesn't get that much blood flow. So you can literally see your brain activity and where there's blood flow, where there's not blood flow, and it can cause you to act in these ways that
Yeah.
you wouldn't normally act in if you had a
And
healthy brain.
and just even hearing you say that, think about people who have strokes, right?
Exactly.
Because of the
Yes.
oxygen in the brain and the lack of blood flow.
Yes.
So
Yes.
more stress, like you said, it can induce medical conditions.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
wow. So
These
as
vessels
we
are
wrap up,
crazy.
I number one want to say thank you for coming today. If you can, please share what you got going on, any new books or any new shows you got. Feel free to plug yourself in, and that way everybody can know how they find you as well.
Yes, yes. So if you haven't gotten my book, The Recipe to Elevated Consciousness, I talk all about getting the stress and trauma out of your body so you can have that beautiful frequency, that high vibration, and attract what you really meant for, which is the perfect life that you want. So yeah, that's my book. And I'm actually writing another book with Olivia Smith from Earthing, and it's all about grounding and earthing, which is one of the
Ooh,
modalities
that
that
sounds like a
changed
good
my
one.
life forever. Oh, it's going to be amazing. It's all about earthing stories and how earthing and grounding has changed people's lives, and it's going to be crazy. I mean, the stories in that book blow my mind. so so yeah, I mean that book is going to be great. You can find me on Instagram, Elisabeth spelled with an S-I Hoekstra. And yeah, I mean, I'm around. I'm out here trying to raise
Yeah.
consciousness and awareness in any way that I can. So
Well, Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure. I got to figure out how to get you back on here for another talking point, but this has been a blessing. I'm sure my listeners are going to enjoy it. Everyone, again, thank you for pulling up this week on the JefeTalk Podcast. Remember the slogan: act, think, live, take action, rethink your steps, and live your life the best way you can. Peace.